This is interesting. So imagine that you had to go a mile or less. And if you did...
A mile?
A mile.
Okay.
If you had to travel a mile or less, you would walk it. And if you had to go more than a mile, you would drive it.
Okay.
So paradoxically, you would go 2 miles quicker than you would go 1 mile.
Uh-huh.
If you follow that rule, the important insight here is that if you only take action when things cross a certain threshold of badness, sometimes better things can feel worse than worse things.
Oh, yeah.
So if you look around and you see that people are stuck in region beta, this zone of comfortable complacency, right? It's the guy that sticks in his just okay job because his boss isn't too much of a dick, but the pay isn't that good and he's not really that passionate, but it's all right, whatever. The person that stays in the acceptable relationship, they're not that fired up, but they're not really in love and their partner's not really got much alignment with their interests. Or the person that stays in a crappy apartment and there's a bit of mold in the ceiling, but it's cheap and it's in a good area of town or whatever. All of these people would be better off if their situations were worse, because it would give them the activation energy to kick them out of the bottom, and their only regret would be not doing it sooner.
Dude, I love that. So it's funny because if I look back on the instances that were the most painful in my life, every single one of them, without fail, has created a disproportionate gain, right? Like the most painful thing early on for me was quitting my job and leaving my dad basically. And then that created my first business and the gyms and all of that stuff. Getting into the DUI, the head-on collision, and like that whole situation got me out of all of these failed partnerships that I wasn't willing to do. But in the moment I was like, I'm such a failure. Like I suck at everything. But that gave me the springboard. When I lost everything the first time after that, that then gave me like the idea that I needed to change the business model around, right? And that's what switched me into the licensing model, right? And so like each of these times, and then that became, the first real fortune.
This is kind of like alchemy.
Yeah.
Like turning something which is worse than useless into something that's as precious and useful as possible.
I'm sure you know the parable of the man and his son, and he like buys the son a horse and then it falls and he breaks the leg and then they're like, oh, it's so sad. And then the army comes, then his son doesn't die. And then it's like, oh, it's how great, right? And so it's one of those really interesting ones where like whatever negative situation, and this is probably good for the audience, but like if you think back to all the negative situations you had, like the really, really bad ones, when you expand the time horizon, most times they become net wins. And so then it just means that like, if you're in a really tough time right now, you just got to wait. and then you'll get your reference point back on all the things that changed as a result, because most times when shit is bad, it can't get worse. So then you feel like, well, it can't get worse than this. And then your action threshold decreases and you do all the things you should have done anyways. And so it's like, we have this big stack of should do's and we just wait until it's 2 miles.
Yep.
And then I'm
getting in the car.
Like the firing conversation. And you're like, well, I just fired one person, or like I just ended one partnership. I just broke up with one girl or whatever it is. And you're like, who else do I need to talk to today? Right? Like, and then in like a period, like you have these rapid periods of growth that happen. And then you have the next web of comfort because it's way better than you were before.
Yep.
And I think I wonder, this is more just like an open thought, but like, I wonder how long like more successful people stay in that next plateau. Like I wonder if their threshold for
action stays low.
Yeah, they're I'm getting comfortable, like how quickly they get comfortable into like, I need to change, I need to get better.
Next one. The heaviest things in life aren't iron and gold, but unmade decisions. The reason you are stressed is that you have decisions to make and you're not making them.
It's a good quote.
You said it. You said it.